Hello, welcome to Things That Go Bump in the Night. As we continue, I'm going to do this second one. It's actually a part two of one that we've been talking about, and this is about the Annabelle doll. And the first one, if you want, you can go back to that one. If you like the content, I'd like you to just to subscribe and click the like button, make a comment, let me know what you think about what's going on. But so in this second one, I want to talk about the paranormal events that surrounded the Annabelle doll. We touched on that just a little bit in the previous short. And so when you think about this Raggedy Ann doll, whose name became Annabelle because the spirit of a little child that a medium said name was Annabelle Higgins is what went into this doll and caused a lot of his problems with that. But there was a lot of supernatural stuff that surrounded, a lot of paranormal things that went around. And we'll just touch on a little bit of that stuff because I've been exposed to some of that stuff. We've seen some of those things that are like that. And, you know, we went in the last one, we talked about the fact that the doll was not possessed. The doll had a spirit associated with it that moved it around and did a bunch of other things. The doll's got some nefarious things that are taught with it because we talk about, you know, after the passing of Ed and Lorraine Warren and their museum that they had, that they would have people come in, they'd make a little bit of money off it and show all the cursed items that they had and effects that they had in it. You can get on YouTube. There's a tour of the Ed and Lorraine Museum, and you could see some of that stuff for yourself. But, you know, they had cursed objects in it, things that they went on their travels or whatever that they had gotten. And so they opened it. They would open up their little room in there and they would see it. But after their passing, they needed the new owners for their demonologists or their organization that they set up, decided to take the doll on tour. And especially the famous tour last year in 2025. You've seen that doll went to several places in which it was going on. So the reputation on some of this stuff that surrounded the doll, and especially when people had challenged its authority or its power, ended up in car wrecks. Some of them actually, they claim one person got killed in a motorcycle wreck and stuff that's like that would happen. When the doll went to Ed and Lorraine Warren's house, Ed Warren talks about, in this book, we talked about in the last one, the demonologist, the extraordinary life, Ed and Lorraine Warren. I'm not pushing the book. I'm just giving you a source. If you want to get the book on your own, go right ahead. I'm not paid anything, nor am I promoting the book. You can open it up and you can read about it for yourself on some of the stuff that is happening with that. But when that doll was at Ed and Lorraine Warren's house, there are certain things that happened. A necklace exploded, some other things that took place, and the doll just had an aura about itself. You know, you get the creeps when you're around certain things that are like that. You know, some of the idols that they talk about, some people tell you there's a hole in the back of an idol for the spirit to go in and out of when they're worshiping it. But we're talking about the Annabelle doll that had spawned the series of the Annabelle series, of the horror series, and part of the Conjurings. But anyway, so when you get through all of this stuff, Lou was the person that Ed and Lorraine Warren list as one of the people that was attacked. So picking up a little bit about where we left off, that got the people to have Ed and Lorraine Warren to come in there was Lou had a dream in which this Annabelle doll was crawling up its leg, coming up and trying to choke him. Well, he woke up and he got away from there. But then all of a sudden, he was alone with his girlfriend in the apartment where the Annabelle doll was residing, this Raggedy Ann doll that now was associated with the name Annabelle. That started it. We're talking the genesis of Annabelle before it got out. But all of a sudden, they heard a lot of noise that was happening in the room next door, and it was closed. It was the other lady that was staying there, the roommate, and they opened up the door, and it was kind of dark. And he opened up the door, but Annabelle was in the corner by herself, just tossed, like it was just tossed into the corner. And so the gentleman decided, I'm going to go in and see what was going on in here, because it sounded like stuff was being thrown around and noises and stuff like that there. So he went in, and the next thing, he said he felt a presence that was in the room with him. And he turned around to see where it was. And lo and behold, this spirit that was in there clawed him in the chest. Put a big old claw mark in his chest with, he describes as 3 vertical lines and 4 horizontal lines that went across its chest and drew blood. Now, some people would say that I've always used the term or heard of those as psychic slashes. And, the enemy can sit down there and do the manifestations. Me and my wife, we were in a deliverance service one time, and then all of a sudden they were praying for this lady, and I could hear her screaming. I mean, when you're around there, sometimes you're praying for people. This lady was just like screaming, blood-curdling screams at the top of her lungs. And the lady that was ministering to her, trying to help her, didn't understand what was going on. And so I don't know why, but they called me and my wife over there. I guess they figured that we might have had some experience on there. So I got over there and immediately started to command the spirit and bind the spirit and to settle down and all that stuff like that. But she just kept fidgeting around in her chair. And she just kept fidgeting around in her chair. And finally, I got her to calm down a little bit. And I said, "What is going on?" And she was saying, "It's scratching me. It's scratching me under my clothes. I can feel it scratching." And I was looking right at her, and right there on her arm, scratch marks started to appear like a cat or an animal was scratching her skin. And I mean, and they actually puffed up like, you'd see something, they welt up like that there. Well, immediately we took authority over that. And you know what? In the name of Jesus, all those scratch marks disappeared. That spirit had to leave. But what I'm just saying is that manifestation real? Yes, I have seen it. Whether you believe that or not, I'm not sure. But a lot of people have gone through that. So that's why we're talking about not getting involved or being, as a Christian, what is our response to that? It's always in the name of Jesus. But so they had some scratch marks, and that's what all of a sudden led. But his marks were a little bit deeper. That's what led them to consult with a priest. That's what led them eventually to where Ed and Lorraine Warren came in and talked to them. And when you read it, even in the case that's in their book, you realize how the Bible tells us that God's people are perishing for lack of knowledge. They didn't know no better. They thought the doll was being moved around by an Annabelle Higgins, the spirit that wanted to inhabit the doll. And then all of a sudden, when a front came against that, and the devil was now cornered or open, now all of a sudden he openly attacked the one gentleman that knew what it really was, the mask. When the mask was off and he knew it, he understood that. And so he became the target at that point. And all of a sudden, that's when they decided to come there. And then and Lorraine talked to them. But they were totally ignorant. And I say the church is full of ignorance. You can get mad at me. The world is full of ignorance. I mean, one of the things today, it's not only happening in the church world, it's happening also in the secular world, where people's houses are being invaded, infested by spirits, and they don't know how to handle that. So that's what we were talking about, this from a Christian's perspective, is how to handle it. It's amazing, though, how Christians get involved in some of this stuff. They watch these paranormal movies, shows, and they get engrossed in it. And, like I've said before, I'm not bashing the shows, because they're exposing something that is real, that is happening. And they're doing it, a lot of them, I believe, out of, a good heart to do something like that. But when all of a sudden they're drawing kids in. Kids are very impressionable, and they're being drawn in. And some of the adults also that are being in and out of that there. So there's a lot of things that happen. And some of the other events that took place around this case with this Annabelle doll was that it could seem to almost move on its own. it would go from one room to another. It would like they wouldn't physically see it get up and walk, but it would just appear. If there was a teleportation of what was happening with that doll. And those are called apports, and we see those. And a lot of times those spirits have power. They can move things around. Maybe they moved them at night, or sometimes they just went from one place to another when they're in the demonic realm. So the doll would teleport itself around. If you got objects that are teleporting themselves around in the house, I'd at least seek counsel or take authority and get rid of those. And get notes. All of a sudden, notes would appear on parchment that looked like a little child scribbled them down, asking for help or sympathy. And when they didn't use parchment paper in the house at all of a sudden they start showing up, ought to be a good sign or an indicator that something's not really happening. Now, then. At one case, they walked in, they saw Annabelle was sitting down there, and she had some blood drops, 3 of them, on the back of her hand. And all of a sudden, of course, they disappeared. Now, this is interesting, and a lot of things itself. We were in a place in which we were doing a seminar one time, and we went to lunch, and after we came back from lunch, I was getting ready to get up and preach again, and I looked down on the floor, and I noticed in front of me, in the floor, was 3 big drops of blood. Now, I wish I would have had the foresight to wipe it up, put it in something, and get it analyzed, but I didn't. I mean, I've learned on some things as we go along. So I talked to the minister. I say, hey, what is somebody here cut or bleed? Nobody was there. So somebody came and then they wiped it up. And it's interesting here, 3. Those are symbolic gestures that the enemy loves to drop. So yes, he can manifest the blood in different places. There's case studies and stories of people that could plunge a knife into the ground and blood would come up out of the ground. So there's a lot of things that come on in the supernatural, but we as Christians have to exercise our senses to see what is right and what is wrong. Another thing that would happen in these places was the different gesturings of the hands, the movement of things that would go on that wouldn't normally go on. If you put it, I would be expecting, if I put something in the corner, that I would expect it to be there the next time I came, and the next time I came, and the next time I came. But no, and all of a sudden it's got different things that are happening. Its arms are moving and the stuff like that. They're trying to get your attention, trying to draw attention to itself. Because a lot of times the devil wants an invitation, and he's trying to get you for the invitation. And they did that. They told him, yeah, you can go possess that little doll. And they just gave the devil carte blanche, the spirit behind the doll, carte blanche, to be able to talk into it. So we also talked about the cutting of the flesh. I went over all of that. We've seen that. So a lot of different stuff like that was going on. So there's events that surrounded this doll. And some of the other things that surrounded the doll even after it left. Hey, you remember in 2025, Dan Rivera, a young man, I think he was like 54 years of age, he was going on tour with the Annabelle doll. And he would take it different places and he would show people that, but all of a sudden he mysteriously died while he was on tour. So, when you're playing with stuff, you don't necessarily know what you're playing with. And especially when you're playing around with things in the darkness, no telling what you're inviting in your house. No telling what's coming into your house. And a lot of times that's what was happening. So there's a lot of mystique, a lot of mysterious things that happen. Hey, they ran their luck, and it's somebody that made something off the Annabelle doll and it was inspired. Hey, they made 4 movies out of it and got a cult following basically with these people seeing these Annabelle dolls. But I wanted to go over real quick on that case story. I wanted you to know the origins of where Annabelle came from. I wanted you to know how the genesis of how that spirit got it, how that doll got its name, and some of the manifestations going on. And in the future, we're going to be talking about different manifestations or different things that are happening. And hey, like I said, if you like the content that you're listening to, please subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know, because there's a lot of stuff that I'd like to bring out, and as we do. Hey, thank you all for tuning into the channel. I hope this is inspiring you to do a lot of research and understand what's going on and to monitor what your children are watching or what you're bringing into your house also. Hey, we'll talk with you all later. Take it easy. Thank you all for tuning in to Things That Go Bump in the Night. Thank you all.